I'd like to welcome Vincent Duffy from the Revenue Commissioners as Principal Officer, and he's going to talk about the revenue, and CTO, sorry, the revenue's journey to 27,001, which they've achieved back in 2009.
Yes.
One more. That's forward, that's back, that's
yep.
laser.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. As the introduction there, my role is CTO in revenue. Prior to this, back in 2008, 2009, I was responsible for bringing in the ISO 27000, and in 2010 brought in the ISO 22301, which was the business continuity standard. So I'll just take you through a brief agenda of, you all know who revenue are, or at least you should. And you may not like what we do, but you know who we are. But in terms of ICT, I'm going to take you through quickly where we are and how ISO 27000 affected us. I'm going to go very quickly through the standard, although that's probably touching on a lot of what other people did this morning, so I'll gloss over that. I'll focus on our journey, and I've picked a few different things out of the standard that we'll focus on. Again, I'll skip anything that was done this morning by others. The second last section there is what we call tips and advice, and this is the kind of thing that I would have appreciated back in 2008, 2009 from somebody who had gone through it, and advice on what worked well, what didn't work well, and maybe approaches you could think of and take. And finally, what were the benefits of 27,000 to an organisation like Revenue? So the history of Revenue, we've been knocking around in IT terms since the very early 60s. Now, I haven't been knocking around that long, but our data centres are based, they're in 1970s buildings in the city centre, which is a big factor when we came into 27,000 and doing our physical security. And those sites have gone through several changes over those decades, so we'll touch on those. On site, for example, we're 24/7 by 365 security. We've about 80 racks of our own things, and we also, at this stage, we have about 35 other government agencies have equipment located in our data centres, and the vast majority of that is as a direct result of us being 27,000 compliant. Revenue's ICT footprint there, look, we're 6,000 people across almost 90 sites or thereabouts around the country. Massive telephony setups, massive PC and LANs and servers. And the key thing we're going to concentrate on is our 24/7 online services. Driver behind us taking 27,000. We run, there's some stats, won't go through them. We run a couple of what we call our flagship systems. We obviously have our Revenue website, which is your standard brochureware information site. But underneath that is our Revenue online service, or ROS as it's called, which has been knocking around since the late 1990s, probably one of the very early kind of e-government implementations, full PKI security, all that goes with it. Below that then we have what's been rebranded recently is our My Account service, which is largely citizen focused, which is people, your PAYE, your property tax, and various schemes there where you can go in and self-help and look after your credits and your claims and your repayments and so on. The numbers there on the left-hand side are just to show you how far we've come. Like if you see there, 99.99% of all customs traffic is online today. There is a minuscule amount that comes in by paper. Massive amounts of vehicle registrations, hundreds of thousands of PAYE self-service transactions every year. 1 million plus people are registered, and so on. Masses of money coming through and going out through ROS all year. So, you jump back in time to 2008, 2009. Revenue were in, and you kind of have to step back. Everybody thinks online today, but back in 2007, 8, 9, there was still some reluctance, and Revenue were going down a path of mandating electronic filing for certain taxes and certain size organisations. But obviously what we were concerned of is corporates out there, particularly the ones with the large Americans with their Sarbanes-Oxley and all that sort of stuff driving them, had to know that they could trust revenue in an online capacity. So we were looking around to say, how could we assure these people? And ISO 27000 was the standard we looked at. It was certifiable, so you could kind of prove you have reached a certain level, and we could work with that then for these companies. So I got the dubious task of having to implement this. One of the reasons we looked at 27,000 is, as I described there, it's shrink-wrapped consultancy. There's for 100, 150 euros or whatever it is it costs you, you get a best practice model. And as I also say there, it's not a suite of products, it's not a vendor specific, it's a management suite, a management system that you're buying into. Secondary to that revenue, we're also looking at, we've done the 22301, the business continuity, and we're currently looking at other standards. 29119, there's the software testing standard, which we are a long way towards implementing, and we're looking at ISO 20000 at the moment, which is kind of an interpretation of ITIL. So we are standards focused, we are best practice focused, and that's what we strive to achieve. I'm not going to dwell on this. This is the standard. These are the areas it covers. Lots of people this morning have been through that, and there's plenty of stands outside. I'll give you it in minute detail. The key thing there, you see the second last one is the business continuity. We made a conscious decision at the time to kick business continuity out of ISO 27000 into what was the British standard 25999 is now ISO 22000. So we use that, and they've gone through. That's the 22301 standard, the area of business continuity, probably worth a whole morning or a day's talk in its own right. What did we do? This is the way we started. Back in 2008, 2009, we were it was about 18 months from start to finish. Now, that wasn't a full-time job for any of us. We had our other roles. But that actually ties in with some of the speakers there earlier on who were saying it's 15 to 18 months, so it's not a surprise there. First key thing I think everybody should do is do a gap analysis. We engaged with an outside, it would happen to be Certification Europe, but you should, you need to involve somebody here to look at you critically, and you have to be open to criticism. If you're going to be real defensive there and say, well, we're actually better than you're saying, you're not really going to achieve what the standard is about. You have to be open to criticism. You have to be open to changing your ways. I'm not saying you accept all the criticisms from the auditor, and if Michael Brophy is still out there somewhere, we had many a robust argument with Michael as an auditor about what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable. And that's fair game. It is a two-way street. But it is definitely worth engaging with somebody to look at you critically. If you're running with in-house people developing this, you might be a bit too close to home to look critically at yourself. Other speakers this morning have touched on the big thing down there is the culture and buy-in. You absolutely need top-level buy-in from this. If this is some mid-ranking IT manager pushing this as a nice-to-have, you haven't to hope. This really, really has to come from your top-down, your board, your CIOs to say, we are doing this. It's bigger than IT. It's a cultural change. It's a PR side of it. It's everything. So you really, really need that kind of buy-in. Some specific things there. Look, get training done. Go on the courses. Get your people certified. When you're trying to get your own staff, your on-site people, the advice there I have is tailor your training to them. There's no point in telling your HR staff how to man the security cameras, okay? Tailor your training to hit the people and their job, and you'll get a much easier buy-in from them. Other things, very few people touched on scope this morning. The scope is the first thing you have to decide. What are you looking at? What are you trying to defend against? And what are the boundaries in that? And the auditors will analyse this in great detail. And my advice to you there is pick some sort of central boundary. It's either a business process, a business service, it's a physical location, or it's something with a logical end and perimeter around it. There's no point in coming to the auditor and saying, that server over there in the corner, well, only half of it is in scope, the other half does something else. That won't cut it. So you need a sensible scope statement. For us, it's all our public-facing internet services. Very grandiose statement, but there's a finite amount of people, processes, machines and equipment behind that, which leads to the second one, the assets. You've got to know what are you trying to defend here. And assets are everything from physical servers and networks that you can put your hand on, to logical things like databases and software stacks, to people. Who are the people that are on your site? Who are coming in or who are going out? Who are the software testers? Who are the software developers? Who are the third-party support? That's the kind of thing you need to do. And then a bottom question there for yourself is, well, how are you going to map this? A CMDB is a configuration management database. A lot of you probably have it. A lot of you probably have it in spreadsheets and things like that. So think about what do you need here to kind of inventory your assets and how you're tracing them. The next one, again, a good few people touched on it this morning, is your risk assessment. How are you going to do about that? And we definitely had a very, very strong debate about this. You go to the internet and you look up risk assessment, risk threat, risk likelihood, and it's all very vanilla, green, orange, red. And certainly we felt in the kind of systems we are running, and the point down there is take into account the type of systems and the level of systems. We're running massive clusters, we're running many services and servers handling the load, so take that into account. And the point there, if you've got two traditional pizza box servers and one is running your database and is a single point of failure, and the exact same type of server is running your web server and it's one of 10, there's a very, very different acceptable risk on those two same physical devices. So what I was saying there is take your IT deployment and the sophistication of your IT deployment into account when you're assessing risk on individual assets. And down there, look, there's just a matrix and a scale of risk and risk register. So again, you need to track that, and the auditors will expect that you're tracking risk over time. And key thing is you're learning from your risk. And we were talking about big hacks and very expensive hacks there this morning, but I think it was Michael Brophy touched on. There's lots and lots and lots of small little things. Lost laptops, phones being lost. They are information security incidents or potential ones. Are you learning from these little things? Because it could be the 1,000 cuts that kills you rather than the beheading or whatever. Physicals, nobody touched on physicals this morning, so it just so happens I happen to have a few diagrams on physicals, which is great. We're running 2 data centres in the Dublin area. We're near Tier 4 level data centres. I don't believe you can achieve Tier 4 in Ireland because there's not multiple electrical networks in the country. We run, and probably growing out of ISO 27000 and business continuity, what we learned, we're now running an active site across our 2 sites. All our services, all our key services run across both sites, and theoretically, one site could actually be obliterated off the map and revenue would keep going. That's the theory. We have tried it in near-time practice. We haven't quite obliterated a site, but we've certainly turned sites off. Little praise for ourselves there. We were the first public body in Ireland to achieve both those certifications, so a little clap in the back for ourselves. Again, this is utility stuff from a physical site. We have all the multiple generators, the UPS power supplies, the multiple fuse boards, the N+1 of everything you can think of in the mechanical and electrical space. We have similar on the network connectivity. We're part of government networks. We have our own dark fibre between our data centres. We have multiple vendors on site. We have multiple ducts going out different ends of the building. We have thought of it all, we think. And our security then, which is a big thing, it's a big section, the whole standard, is your security. We're 24/7 on site. We've 100 odd cameras around the site. We have them down the aisles, down in our data centre. We have them on doors. We have them on access points. We have them on perimeters. And we have a local Garda station, and obviously everybody's entitled to it, but us being a large government, we have very close relationships with the guards next door to us in near Kilmainham. A couple of things. These are not directly from the standard, just a few pictures there to show you the kind of thing. We rebuilt a 1970s site basically from the floor up during the late 2000s there. We had been threatened with decentralisation. There was a drop-off in spend on the site for a few years. That all went away. So OPW and them started reinvesting in our site. So we took the time, and Tara, one of my colleagues down there, is one of the key drivers behind this. You can see the kind of standards we're enforcing there. Caging, proper cabling, proper labelling on the racks. And the attitude really is, if you're going to do it right, or if you're going to do it at all, do it right. And that's just a kind of a physical interpretation of how some of the standard is affecting us. There you can see some of the security things, so everything from razor wire to security huts with multiple cameras and TV screens. Access control to your buildings. Again, who's allowed into your computer room? Who's not allowed in? Are you logging who's going in? All of those kind of things will be expected from you as part of the standard. And by the way, when you're coming from a site that had relatively open access to its staff, that is a huge change in culture. Why am I allowed through that door this week when I was last week? So expect that kind of kickback. Do they not trust me kind of attitude? So that's where you're going to have to, in your culture awareness. Some hints and points here. Your documentation style, we went for a 4-tier document style. One is the very, very grandiose statements that your board management make. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt do that. The second level is the real policies. What do your network people need to do? What's your cryptography policy? What's your physical site policy? And again, you'll see they're kept small, and this is reflecting what some of the other speakers said this morning. 3, 4, 5 pages is ample. Anything more than that, you people just glaze over and they will not read. Down to the level 3, this is how-to guides. How do you dispose of old disk drives? Example, there's a process. How do you bring new people on? How do you bring them into Active Directory? How do you take them out of Active Directory? That's really down at the operational level. And number 4 then is where the auditors will be, is the logs to prove you are doing what you said you will do. And there, the growth and the churn will be down at the level 4. You're constantly knocking off logs, door access logs, change order logs, incidents, etc. Some of the tips, and you'll note here I have, this is laziness. I took this from a 2010 slide deck, but it's probably, there's no point in looking back now 5, 6, 7 years back with rose tinted glasses. These were hints we picked up at the time. I'll just skip through a few of them. Your organisation structure, tie into some sort of management structure you've got today. Don't be creating a new one. For us, we have what we call an IT executive, which goes right the way up. I'd be on it as the CTO, our CIO is on it, some business people, right up to a board member. So tie into that, report into them. Asset management we've discussed. HR, this is probably easier for us in the public service because all of our kind of vetting of people is done through a third party. Now, we had to audit that third party that they were fit for purpose, but it's easy for us. Physical and environmental, if you're coming from an old site like we were, that's massive. You're going to have to upgrade your thing. You could be a computer room, it might be as simple as put a lock with a swipe pad on it or something like that and stick a camera on it. Other key ones, because I'm down to 2 minutes here. Access control, use your existing applications. What control levels are built into them? Talk to business, what do they want? Anything, business continuity we kicked off to the sub. The points there at the end, and this is where you'll need your kind of buy-in. We started by analysing what have we got in place. Now, we didn't have a great story to tell on written documentation, but we had a lot of well-established practices. Some were fit for purpose, some weren't. But if you want to get people to change, there's no point in going to the internet and buying a pack of documentation for ISO 27000 and say, here guys, everybody do that tomorrow. It won't cut it. So we took the processes that we had, we mapped them against the standard, and we filled the gaps basically, and that got much easier buy-in for us, because if you're imposing from the top, they'll just do it, pay it lip service. They won't buy into it. Okay, for time, right? Challenges, again, without going through these all in great detail. Staff buy-in is key. That was touched on this morning. What you'll find is they will start reverting to type. particularly when you're dealing with techies, and I have a lot of techies working for me. They do things their way. They've done it for 20 years. That's the way they do. They know best, blah, 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 blah. And a week after you've brought in a standard, they're gone back. Now, you need that with your logs of what they're doing, and you need regular awareness training. And if the same guy is tripping up making the same mistakes, well, you get him into a training room and you kill him with PowerPoint for an hour and he'll soon change his tune. Okay? Time commitments, again, the lady from the email company this morning was saying, be careful of your time commitments. Don't overcommit or oversell to yourself and your managers what you're capable of doing. We started off really enthusiastic. We would have audits of every section every year. That dries up very fast when you run out of time. So be practical in your time commitments there. Lastly, I think this is my last slide, it is, yeah. The benefits to revenue and why did we do it? The internal culture has massively changed. Revenue, right up to board level, takes data protection very, very, very seriously, and there have been disciplinary cases. So it's there, it's a high agenda item for us. It drives other initiatives. For us, we revamped the data centre, we got commitment to buy in, we pushed the active on our business continuity. So we were getting side benefits arising out of doing the ISO 27000. The site I've covered, we have massive security, and we now have 35 other public sector agencies are on our site simply because we have 27001 accreditation. The audits, again, it was said this morning, don't be afraid of the audits. They keep you on the top of your game, and they do work with you. They will always find something that you're letting slip or something like that, but they keep the culture and the awareness higher. And for outside agencies, and this has probably been the massive gain for revenue, as government moves into more data sharing, and both nationally and internationally, all of these agencies and other tax authorities are coming to you saying, well, we'll give you data, but we want to make sure you're going to handle it correctly. And we'd be asking the same of them. And people there like the EU, who we have a massive commitment to at customs level, the US IRS for data exchange agreements. I personally got grilled for 5 hours by the IRS on revenues, information security and corporate IT governance. When you can wave ISO 27000 in their face, it's a hell of an easier discussion to have. And I'll leave it at that, I think. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.